there was a man who lived longer than any king, any philosopher, any hero of legend. They say he was born around the year 483 BCE in Leontini, a small Greek city on the island of Sicily. He outlived every ruler, every thinker, and even his own descendants by generations. His name, Gorgias. But what is most astonishing about him? His age. Some say he lived to be 109 years old, supposedly. In a time when the average lifespan was just over 35 years, this man defied all odds and logic. Gorgias of Leontini, as he is often called to distinguish him from others with the same name, was considered one of the founders of Sophism. This school of thought, which emerged in ancient Greece around the 5th century BCE, emphasized rhetoric and persuasion over abstract philosophical debates. Imagine a time when words were not just tools of communication, but weapons of influence. A time when the power to persuade could shift political landscapes and decide the fate of nations. Gorgias perfected the art of rhetoric, mastering the ability to sway minds with his words. He believed that oratory speeches were concerned with what is just and unjust. His skill was so profound that he was considered the greatest rhetorician of his day. But how did this man from a small town in Sicily become such an influential figure? His writings included Enchantment of Helen, a defense of Palamedes, and On Non-Being or On Nature. These works became canonical examples of sophistic argumentation. As he traveled around mainland Greece as an itinerant teacher of rhetoric, reputedly commanding large fees for his lessons, Gorgias left a lasting impact on the intellectual landscape. His ideas and teachings resonated through generations, shaping how people thought about language, persuasion, and power. Today, his name is synonymous with the art of rhetoric. By the end of this journey, you will understand how Gorgias's use of ingenious rhetorical tricks allowed him to persuade anyone about anything. So, let us begin our journey into the world of Gorgias, where words held a power that could move mountains. Before we begin, a small request. Most of the people listening tonight aren't subscribed. If this channel has ever helped you drift off, take a moment to subscribe. It's free, it helps this channel more than you'd think, and you can always change your mind later. And if you feel like it, leave a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love reading them. One more thing before we begin. I'm also a co-founder of a sleep app built to be the most affordable one out there. No ads, ever. Just sounds and stories made to help you sleep. It may not be released yet as this video goes up, but if you're watching a little later, it might be out by now. Just search for it, it should be easy to find. It works on iPhone, Android, and everything in between. Downloading it is the best way to support this channel. At this time, Gorgias is already renowned for his ability to sway crowds with just a few well-chosen words. His journey to Athens marks the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one that will catapult him to pan-Hellenic fame. Upon arriving in Athens, Gorgias's rhetorical prowess quickly draws attention. His speeches are not merely orations, they are performances, carefully crafted to captivate and persuade. His style is so unique and effective that it marks his entry into the vibrant intellectual life of Athens in the late 420s, 410s BCE. In a city where eloquence is highly valued, Gorgias stands out. His skills are not just impressive, they are instrumental. They allow him to navigate the complex political landscape and forge alliances with influential figures. His rhetorical techniques aren't just theoretical, they are practical tools he uses to influence the most powerful people in Athens. As his reputation grows, so does his influence. His name begins to echo through the agora and symposia of Athens. Imagine being in the heart of Athens, where philosophy and politics intertwine like grapevines around a courtyard. Gorgias's voice rings out, commanding attention not just for its cadence, but for its substance. His skills are so refined that they propel him into the highest echelons of Athenian society, marking his entry not just as a notable orator, but as a philosopher whose ideas will shape future generations. By the late 420s BCE, Gorgias has become a household name in Athens. His rhetorical mastery is so profound that it sets new standards for persuasive speech. His journey from a small Sicilian town to the epicenter of Hellenic philosophy is complete. And with it, a new era in rhetoric begins. As he stands before the gathered crowds and notable figures of Athens, his words do more than just persuade. They set the stage for philosophical debates that will echo through time. His skills are so remarkable that they lay the groundwork for his philosophical influence, illustrating how the art of persuasion can move mountains. And so, Gorgias's journey from Leontini to Athens is not just one of geographical distance, but also one of intellectual ascension. In the heart of ancient Greece, philosophy was not just a pursuit of wisdom, but also a tool for persuasion. But it was not just the art of persuasive speech that captivated him. Gorgias delved into deeper philosophical questions. His most profound explorations centered around nihilism, the idea that nothing exists. He argued that even if something did exist, it could not be known. Knowledge, he believed, was fundamentally unattainable. And even if knowledge were possible, Gorgias contended that communication of this truth would be impossible. This triad of non-existence, unknowability, and incommunicability formed the core of his philosophical beliefs. These views were not just abstract musings, but a provocative stance that challenged the very foundations of truth and reality. For Gorgias, the impossibility of truth drove him to a new avenue, rhetoric. If truth could not be known or communicated, then the art of persuasion became paramount. Rhetoric, to Gorgias, was not just a skill but a means by which any belief could be made convincing. His philosophical beliefs drove his deep interest and mastery in rhetoric. This philosophical journey from the denial of existence to the art of persuasion illustrates how Gorgias used ingenious rhetorical tricks to persuade anyone about anything. Gorgias was renowned for his masterful use of rhetorical techniques, which he employed to persuade and captivate audiences. His arsenal included figures of speech that added poetry and drama to his oratory. Among these techniques were Antithesis, Pauronomasia, Anecdotes, Parachasis, Homoioteliuton, Paralogism, and Isocolon. Antithesis, for example, allowed Gorgias to present contrasting ideas in a way that made his arguments more compelling. Pauronomasia involved the playful use of similar-sounding words to create a pleasing rhythm, making his speeches more melodic and memorable. Anecdotes was his technique of repeating the last word or phrase of one clause at the beginning of the next, creating a smooth flow in his rhetoric. Parachasis included repetition and alliteration to emphasize key points and enhance the emotional impact of his arguments. Homoioteliuton, or identical endings, added a sense of balance and finality to his statements. Paralogism, the repetition of words in close succession, and isocolon, which used clauses of equal length, further enhanced the rhythmic quality of his rhetoric. By expertly weaving these poetic elements into his speeches, Gorgias created a powerful and persuasive oratory that left audiences spellbound. In the bustling heart of Athens, Gorgias has gathered an eager audience to display his masterful art of persuasion. With a confident smile and measured voice, he begins his performance. His words flow like honey, each one chosen to captivate the minds of those listening. As he speaks, the audience hangs on every syllable, their expressions shifting from curiosity to awe and finally to belief. This is not mere speech, it's a dance of language, carefully choreographed to sway hearts and minds. Callicles, the host of this gathering, is so impressed that he encourages Gorgias to repeat his exhibition for Socrates and himself. Chaerephon, a close friend of Socrates, also urges Gorgias to repeat his performance for them. Gorgias agrees, eager to showcase his skills before these esteemed philosophers. As the dialogue unfolds, Socrates challenges Gorgias on the nature of persuasion and its role in society. Gorgias skillfully navigates these questions, using his rhetorical prowess to make his points resonate deeply with Socrates and Callicles. Throughout the exchange, it becomes clear that Gorgias's ability to persuade is not just about winning arguments, but about shaping perceptions and beliefs. This power of persuasion is not something to be underestimated. It holds the potential to influence decisions and actions on a grand scale. In real-world applications, Gorgias's techniques can be seen in political speeches, legal arguments, and even everyday conversations. To fully grasp the extent of Gorgias's impact, we must delve deeper into the philosophical underpinnings of his rhetorical mastery. As we delve into the philosophical underpinnings of Gorgias's rhetorical mastery, it becomes clear that his ideas are not merely historical artifacts, but living legacies. In Plato's Gorgias, Gorgias figures prominently as the senior practitioner of rhetoric whom Socrates opposes in a spirited debate. This encounter is not just an intellectual exercise, but a pivotal moment that continues to shape our understanding of rhetoric and persuasion even today. Gorgias was translated into English by Benjamin Jowett in the 1800s, making his philosophical insights more accessible to modern readers. But what sets Gorgias apart is not just his mastery of rhetoric, but the radical philosophical ideas he introduced. Gorgias challenged foundational philosophical beliefs with statements like, "Nothing exists." This notion, while extreme, underscores his commitment to questioning the very fabric of reality. His threefold thesis, denying being, knowledge, and communication, is a testament to his provocative thinking that still stirs debate today. Imagine the shockwave these ideas must have sent through classical Greek society, where such fundamental truths were unquestioned. Yet this was not mere intellectual provocation. Gorgias's teachings transformed the understanding of language and argumentation in profound ways. His insights highlighted the power of persuasion, demonstrating how rhetoric can be wielded to sway opinions rather than merely inform. This emphasis on the artful use of language has resonated throughout history, shaping political and social discourse down to our present day. As we reflect on Gorgias's legacy, it becomes clear that his ideas continue to shape our understanding of rhetoric and persuasion in profound ways. In a world where communication is paramount, Gorgias's teachings offer valuable lessons about the ethical implications of rhetoric and the power of persuasion. In Plato's dialogue, Gorgias, the master rhetorician Gorgias, showcases his skills to an enthralled audience. Demonstrating his prowess, he effortlessly persuades others to adopt his views. This display of eloquence and persuasion sets the stage for a philosophical conflict that would cement Gorgias's place in history. As the evening unfolds, Socrates, always the curious interrogator, enters this gathering at Callicles' house. Socrates, known for his relentless questioning, is intrigued by Gorgias's performance and seeks to understand the essence of his art. The dialogue that ensues between Socrates and Gorgias delves deep into the nature of rhetoric and its ethical implications. Gorgias believes his skills allow him to persuade anyone about anything, a claim that fundamentally challenges Socratic ideals. This belief is underpinned by Gorgias' conviction that oratory is concerned with what is just and unjust in society. Socrates, however, holds the view that true wisdom cannot be taught through mere persuasion. As the discussion unfolds, Socrates probes deeper into Gorgias's philosophy, questioning whether rhetoric can truly impart knowledge or if it merely creates the illusion of understanding. This debate highlights the core conflict between the art of persuasion and the pursuit of genuine wisdom. In this philosophical showdown, the ethical implications of Gorgias's teachings are laid bare. The dialogue explores whether persuasive rhetoric can be used responsibly, or if it inherently undermines the quest for truth. This conflict cements Gorgias's place in history as a figure who pushed the boundaries of philosophical thought. This exploration of the philosophical debate between Socrates and Gorgias reveals the complexities at the heart of rhetoric and its role in society. As they engage in this intellectual sparring, the core narrative of their conflict comes to a resolution that underscores the enduring relevance of their ideas. This philosophical battle not only illuminates the power of persuasion, but also questions the very nature of truth and communication. By probing these fundamental concepts, Socrates and Gorgias offer valuable insights into the ethical considerations surrounding rhetoric. In a world where communication is paramount, this debate serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between persuasion and genuine understanding. The dialogue concludes with a sense of unsettled curiosity, inviting further exploration into the nuances of rhetorical practice and its impact on society. Gorgias's ideas, born from the ashes of truth, have left an indelible mark on the landscape of persuasion. His belief that persuasion was more about the art of speech than the substance of the argument revolutionized rhetoric. Gorgias saw language as a tool to wield, not merely a means to convey facts. This admission underscores the idea that rhetoric can create persuasive arguments without regard for underlying truths. Gorgias's ideas continue to influence modern rhetoric and communication, shaping how we perceive and use persuasive language. As we look to the future of rhetoric, understanding Gorgias's past influence is crucial. His techniques are woven into the fabric of today's political speeches, advertisements, and public debates. The art of persuasion has evolved, but its core principles remain the same, a testament to Gorgias's enduring relevance. In an ever-changing world, the ability to persuade, whether through the art of speech or the substance of truth, remains a vital skill. As we move forward, Gorgias's legacy serves as both a warning and an inspiration. Persuasion is powerful, but it must be wielded responsibly. Gorgias's use of language was not just a tool for persuasion, it was his secret weapon. He understood the power of irony, speaking one thing while meaning another. In his debates, Gorgias would often use ironic statements to disarm opponents. For instance, in his encomium of Helen, he praises Helen for her virtuous behavior. But the irony lies in the fact that he is defending a woman who was known for her adulterous nature. This ironic twist subtly undermines the conventional wisdom about Helen's behavior. By employing such rhetorical tricks, Gorgias could make opponents and audiences question their own assumptions. In his On the Negative, Gorgias argues that nothing exists, an ironic statement in itself. This paradoxical claim forces listeners to rethink their understanding of existence. Ultimately, Gorgias's rhetorical techniques serve to undermine opponents and solidify his arguments, illustrating how persuasion can be wielded with finesse and precision. Gorgias's legacy serves as a reminder that rhetoric can be both powerful and subversive. In the world of ancient Greek rhetoric, metaphors were not just ornamental flourishes, they were potent weapons in the art of persuasion. Gorgias, a renowned sophist and master rhetorician, understood this well. His use of vivid language was a cornerstone of his persuasive power. Ancient rhetoric valued metaphors for their ability to condense complex ideas into relatable images. His favorite metaphors often drew on nature or everyday life to make abstract concepts tangible. For instance, he might compare a complex argument to a delicate web spun by a spider. This not only simplified the idea, but also imbued it with an emotional appeal. The vividness of such images made his rhetoric more compelling and easier to remember. By employing metaphors, Gorgias could persuade anyone about anything, even if the logic was thin. Eristic techniques involve the use of deliberate paradoxes, fallacies, and rhetorical traps aimed at disorienting adversaries. Gorgias mastered these tactics to such an extent that he could turn any debate in his favor. In this debate, Gorgias used his Eristic techniques to challenge the prominent Athenian politician Callicles. He began by conceding that rhetoric could be a powerful tool for persuasion. But as the debate progressed, Gorgias slowly shifted the focus from the art of persuasion to its moral implications. He argued that if rhetoric could be used to persuade people of anything, it could also be employed to justify unjust actions. This turn in the argument caught Callicles off guard and effectively undermined his initial stance. By employing such sophisticated debate strategies, Gorgias could turn the tables on his adversaries, leaving them flustered and outmaneuvered. For instance, in another famous debate with Polus, Gorgias used a similar strategy. He initially agreed that rhetoric was an art form, but then pivoted to argue that it was more akin to flattery than teaching. This subtle shift in the argument's direction left Polus struggling to maintain his position, effectively demonstrating how Gorgias could manipulate a debate to serve his purposes. The ethical implications of such techniques are significant. While Gorgias's Eristic strategies were undeniably effective, they raised questions about the integrity and honesty in debate. In an era where public discourse was a critical aspect of civic life, the manipulative use of language to control debates could have far-reaching consequences. Despite these concerns, Gorgias's mastery of Eristic techniques solidified his status as one of the foremost rhetoricians and intellectuals of his time. His ability to turn debates in his favor, even when starting from a position of apparent agreement, demonstrated the power and danger of rhetorical prowess in ancient Athens. Gorgias, a renowned rhetorician of ancient Greece, was known for his mastery of euphemism in oratory. Euphemisms are a form of figurative language used to soften harsh arguments and make them more palatable to an audience. In his speeches, Gorgias often employed euphemisms to discuss sensitive topics without provoking negative emotions. By using gentle language, he could make controversial subjects easier to accept. One of his most influential works is the Enchantment of Helen, where Gorgias uses euphemisms to defend the character of Helen, a figure often blamed for causing the Trojan War. By framing her actions as inevitable due to divine intervention, Gorgias presents a more compassionate view of Helen's role in the war, making his argument more persuasive to the audience. Another example can be found in On Non-Being, where Gorgias uses euphemisms to discuss abstract philosophical concepts. By employing metaphors and analogies, he makes complex ideas more accessible. This technique allows Gorgias to present his arguments in a way that is both intriguing and less likely to provoke resistance from the audience. By using euphemisms, Gorgias could effectively persuade his audience to consider new perspectives, even on challenging topics. This skill made him one of the most influential rhetoricians of his time. His ability to soften harsh arguments through clever language allowed Gorgias to make his views more palatable and, ultimately, more persuasive. This approach highlights the power of rhetoric in ancient Athens, where mastery of language could shape public opinion and influence societal norms. In today's world, we still see echoes of this technique in political speeches and public discourse, where euphemisms are used to make difficult topics more digestible. The legacy of Gorgias's mastery of euphemism continues to influence how we communicate about complex and sensitive issues. Imagine being able to argue any side of any debate convincingly. This is the power that Gorgias, a renowned sophist from ancient Greece, wielded. His mastery over rhetoric was so profound that he could persuade anyone about anything. At the heart of Gorgias's persuasive prowess was his grasp of Inventio, the art of creating compelling arguments. This involved not just crafting speeches, but also finding common ground with his audience. To understand this, consider Gorgias's theory of stasis. Stasis refers to the core issue or question at the heart of a debate. Identifying the correct stasis was crucial for crafting an effective argument. Gorgias could skillfully frame debates in ways that ensured he always had the upper hand. By defining the terms and parameters of the discussion, he controlled the narrative. He also employed the art of finding common ground with his audience. By addressing shared values and beliefs, Gorgias could make his arguments more relatable and thus more persuasive. Imagine a skilled orator like Gorgias debating the use of rhetoric itself. He could argue that while rhetoric is indeed powerful, it must be used responsibly to avoid manipulation. This skill was not limited to grand political debates. Gorgias could argue persuasively about any topic, no matter how mundane or complex. Even if faced with a seemingly impossible task, like arguing for the non-existence of something, Gorgias could invent arguments ex nihilo. Through the art of Inventio, Gorgias crafted narratives so compelling that he could persuade anyone regardless of the starting point. This is why Gorgias remains one of the greatest rhetoricians in history, his ability to create persuasive arguments from any foundation. His techniques continue to influence modern rhetoric and communication strategies, reminding us of the profound power and responsibility that comes with persuasive speech. Gorgias, the renowned sophist of ancient Greece, was known not just for his mastery of rhetoric, but also for his charismatic personality and perceived wisdom. This ethos, or personal character, was a crucial part of what made him such an effective orator. Gorgias understood that in rhetoric, ethos is as important as logos and pathos. He knew how to use his personal credibility to enhance the persuasiveness of his arguments. He adapted his style and tone to suit different audiences, making each feel that he was speaking directly to them. This ability to tailor his ethos made him all the more compelling. For instance, when addressing an audience of philosophers, Gorgias would adopt a more thoughtful and introspective tone. In contrast, when speaking to the general public, he would use simpler language and more engaging stories. This versatility in ethos allowed Gorgias to bridge gaps between different audiences, making his message resonate with a wide range of people. His charisma and perceived wisdom contributed significantly to his persuasive power. In the end, it was not just Gorgias's rhetorical techniques that made him such a formidable orator. It was also his ability to adapt his ethos and use his personal character to enhance his message. Gorgias was known for his masterful use of rhetoric, a skill he honed through intricate logical reasoning. His ability to sway audiences lay not just in persuasive language, but also in the artful use of deduction, induction, and analogies. Deduction, for example, allowed Gorgias to draw clear conclusions from given premises. Imagine a scenario where he asserts that all humans are mortal and Socrates is human. By the process of deduction, Gorgias can logically conclude that Socrates must also be mortal. Induction, on the other hand, involves drawing general conclusions from specific observations. For instance, if Gorgias observes that every swan he has seen is white, he can induce that all swans are likely to be white. Analogies provided another powerful tool in Gorgias's arsenal. He would skillfully compare two seemingly unrelated things to create a compelling argument. To understand the full extent of Gorgias's mastery, we must explore his uncanny ability to tap into the deepest emotions of those around him. He knew that pathos, the power of evocative language and appeals to pity, fear, and desire, could sway even the most rational minds. Gorgias employed vivid and colorful language to paint emotional landscapes that resonated deeply with his listeners. He understood that evocative imagery could make an abstract idea tangible and compelling. He would often use analogies that drew on universal human experiences to create a strong emotional connection. Imagine Gorgias comparing the struggle of a politician to the plight of a brave warrior fighting an impossible battle. The image of a lone figure battling against insurmountable odds was something everyone could relate to. By appealing to these shared emotions, Gorgias could effortlessly persuade his audience to see things from his perspective. But Gorgias's mastery did not stop at evocative language. He also expertly played on the emotions of pity and fear to elicit strong responses. He would describe the harsh realities faced by those less fortunate, evoking a deep sense of empathy in his listeners. Picture him recounting the tale of a destitute family barely scraping by, their daily struggles painfully vivid and real. These emotional appeals created an almost tangible sense of urgency, making his arguments nearly impossible to ignore. Gorgias could also tap into the power of desire, crafting arguments that played on people's aspirations and longings for a better future. He would paint vivid pictures of prosperity and success, making his listeners yearn for the outcomes he proposed. This ability to harness the power of emotions allowed Gorgias to persuade anyone about anything with extraordinary effectiveness. Gorgias, the renowned rhetorician of ancient Greece, had a remarkable ability to persuade his audience. This power was not merely in the words he chose or the arguments he constructed, it lay also in his mastery of silence. Gorgias was known for a technique called aposiopesis, a deliberate pause mid-sentence that created an emotional impact. This rhetorical tool was not merely a pause for dramatic effect, but a calculated move to draw his audience into the moment. In his speeches and debates, Gorgias would use these pauses to evoke emotion and engagement. For instance, during a debate on justice, he might say, "In a just society," and then pause. The audience, anticipating the resolution of his thought, would lean in, their minds racing. This brief silence would heighten the emotional impact of his eventual conclusion. By using such silences strategically, Gorgias could make his points more powerful and memorable. In the ancient Greek world, the art of persuasive speech was honed to a fine edge by skilled orators like Gorgias. His ability to sway audiences with ingenious rhetorical tricks is legendary. Among his tools were captivating anecdotes, stories that held a mirror to life and tugged at the heartstrings. For example, in his Encomium of Helen, Gorgias crafted a tale that challenged conventional wisdom about one of the most famous figures in Greek mythology. He recounted how Helen was abducted by Paris and later blamed for triggering the Trojan War, all while being considered one of the most beautiful women in the world. Gorgias deftly turned the narrative to question, was Helen truly to blame for her own abduction and the subsequent war? By drawing on this personal story, Gorgias elicited empathy from his audience, making the abstract notion of culpability more tangible and evocative. In another instance, Gorgias used anecdotes to underscore the power of persuasion in his treatise on non-being. He told of a poet who could create vivid and compelling images with mere words, illustrating the profound impact language can have on perception. This tale served to emphasize how persuasive speech could shape reality in ways that were both enchanting and unsettling. Thus, storytelling became a compelling rhetorical strategy in Gorgias's arsenal, furthering his ability to persuade anyone about anything. In ancient Greece, Gorgias of Leontini rose to pan-Hellenic fame through his masterful use of rhetoric. This skill enabled him to persuade anyone about anything. One of his most effective techniques involved the strategic employment of rhetorical questions. These questions, designed not for answers but for effect, guided audiences towards a desired conclusion. For instance, when discussing the power of oratory, Gorgias might ask, is it not true that the skilled orator can sway the minds of many with their words? This question doesn't require a response, but instead reinforces the idea of the orator's influence. The power of these questions lies not in their answers, but in how they shape the audience's thinking. By posing a rhetorical question, Gorgias could plant an idea and allow it to grow in the minds of his listeners without directly stating it himself. In essence, Gorgias used questions as a form of rhetorical persuasion that was both indirect and potent. These techniques were not only effective in debates, but also crucial in his educational teachings, where he would guide students towards understanding complex ideas through carefully crafted questions. The use of rhetorical questions thus highlights another sophisticated method in Gorgias's arsenal for persuasive speech. By leading audiences to conclusions rather than simply stating them, he could make his arguments more engaging and memorable. This subtle art of questioning was a cornerstone of Gorgias's approach to rhetoric, furthering his ability to persuade anyone about anything. The power of questioning in persuasive speech cannot be underestimated when wielded with such skill. Gorgias, the renowned rhetorician from Leontini, was known for his ingenious use of figures of speech to amplify his messages. Among these, hyperbole was one of his most potent tools. This emphasis on justice serves to elevate the role of rhetoric in society, making it seem indispensable. Such exaggerations can evoke strong emotional responses from the audience, instilling a sense of importance and urgency in the speaker's words. Imagine an orator using hyperbole to describe a crisis, painting it as the worst catastrophe ever faced by humanity. The audience would feel an intense urgency, believing they must act immediately to prevent this perceived apocalypse. Gorgias's use of hyperbole is a testament to the power of heightened language and persuasive arguments. By intensifying his rhetoric, Gorgias can make even mundane issues seem like monumental challenges that only he can solve. This not only captivates the audience but also positions Gorgias as an authority figure who must be listened to. The emotional impact and audience response to such exaggerations are integral to the success of his persuasive techniques. Gorgias's mastery of hyperbole shows how heightened language can be employed to intensify arguments, further contributing to his ability to persuade anyone about anything. Gorgias, the renowned rhetorician of his time, didn't just rely on hyperbole to captivate audiences. He had another powerful tool up his sleeve: Epanorthosis. Epanorthosis is a rhetorical technique where you first state something, then retract it, and finally restate it in a stronger form. It might seem like a simple trick, but Gorgias used this masterfully to engage listeners and build trust. Imagine you're at one of his speeches. He starts by saying something outrageous, like, "Syracuse is a city full of fools." You'd be shocked, right? But then he takes it back. "No, that's not fair to say. This makes you lean in, curious about where this is going." Finally, he settles on something stronger and more true. They are indeed wise, but misguided by their leaders. This three-step dance keeps you hooked because you're following his thought process. It makes you trust him more because he shows self-correction. Think of it like a detective solving a case. You start with an initial hunch, then realize you're wrong, and finally arrive at the truth. Gorgias didn't just say things to impress, he guided his audience through a thought journey. This self-correction makes him not just persuasive, but wise. It's like watching a master painter refine their work with each stroke. Now, imagine how this plays out in one of his speeches. He starts by saying, "Syracuse's soldiers are weak and cowardly." Alliteration, the repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of closely placed words, is a powerful tool in rhetoric. Consider the effect it has on memory and engagement. In one of his speeches, he states, "Syracuse's soldiers are weak and cowardly." The repetition of the W sound subtly amplifies the impact of this criticism. Imagine hearing these words, perhaps in a heated debate or an impassioned speech. The repeated W sound creates a rhythm that sticks in the mind. The use of alliteration makes his argument more memorable, enhancing its persuasive power. Gorgias's mastery of linguistic devices, like alliteration, showcases how subtle techniques can significantly amplify rhetorical impact. His speeches, laced with such subtleties, become more persuasive and harder to refute. This skill allows him to sway opinions even on the most contentious subjects, demonstrating the potent influence of rhetorical tricks. One of Gorgias's most powerful tools was antithesis, the art of contrasting opposites to drive an argument forward. This technique allows a speaker to create vivid mental images that can sway opinions even on the most contentious subjects. Consider the stark contrast of light and dark. In one of his speeches, Gorgias might describe a world bathed in brightness, where virtue shines like the sun. This image is then abruptly juxtaposed with the scene plunged into darkness, where vice lurks like shadows in the night. This dramatic shift creates an emotional resonance that makes his points unforgettable. Gorgias understood that the human mind is wired to notice differences, and by exploiting this natural tendency, he could make his arguments more compelling and persuasive. His use of antithesis was not merely a stylistic flourish, but a strategic tool to engage the audience's emotions and intellect. By painting vivid contrasts, Gorgias could lead his listeners through a series of logical steps that culminated in a profound realization or call to action. For instance, he might begin by describing the peace and tranquility of a well-governed state where justice reigns supreme. Then, with a sharp pivot, he illustrates the chaos and strife that accompany tyranny. The contrast between these two states is so stark that it leaves no room for ambiguity or doubt in the listener's mind. This masterful use of antithesis highlights how contrast enhances the memorability of arguments. By drawing clear lines between opposing ideas or scenarios, Gorgias could create a mental framework that was easy to grasp and hard to forget. Moreover, antithesis allows a speaker to build towards a climax where the tension between opposites reaches its peak. This technique can be particularly effective in debates or discussions, where the stakes are high and emotions run deep. He arrives after serving as an ambassador from his home city of Leontini, seeking aid against Syracuse. His speeches are filled with an ingenious use of repetition, a technique known as Polysyndeton. And so, he might say, and thus, and therefore, Bryn. This deliberate repetition serves to intensify his message. It creates a rhythm that draws the audience in. And with each repetition, the emphasis on his words grows stronger. By the time Gorgias reaches his climax, his message is not just heard but felt by his audience. Gorgias's method of amplifying ideas was ingenious, using repetition, intensifiers, and expanded examples to draw attention to crucial arguments. He would repeat key phrases multiple times within a single speech, each repetition building momentum and emphasis. Another technique Gorgias employed was the use of intensifiers, like above all, more than anything else, and beyond measure. These amplifications serve to underscore the importance of his points, making them hard to miss. Gorgias also expanded on examples, elaborating with rich detail to make abstract ideas more tangible and memorable. In his defense of Palamedes, he meticulously describes the cleverness and resourcefulness of Palamedes, painting a vivid picture that stays with the audience long after the speech is over. This method of amplification allowed Gorgias to control the narrative and direct his listeners' focus. In the world of classical Greek rhetoric, few figures stand out as powerfully as Gorgias of Leontini. Known for his mastery of oratory and persuasive techniques, Gorgias was celebrated for his ability to sway any audience with his words. One of the key tools in his rhetorical toolkit were exclamations, short, forceful statements designed to evoke strong emotions and underscore the significance of his points. Exclamations were not mere punctuation in Gorgias's speeches. They were strategic devices meant to capture attention and amplify the emotional weight of his arguments. "Oh, Helen," he would exclaim, "how many men have laid down their lives for you? How many cities have fallen due to your beauty?" These outbursts served as rhetorical high points that emphasized the profound influence Helen had on the ancient world. In another instance, Gorgias's defense of Palamedes uses exclamations to highlight the injustice faced by Palamedes, a hero falsely accused of treason. "By the gods," Gorgias would cry out, "how can such an innocent man be so wrongly condemned?" These emotional bursts heighten the drama and pathos of his arguments. The power of Gorgias's exclamatory statements lay not just in their emotional appeal, but also in their ability to disrupt the narrative flow, creating moments of heightened intensity. In doing so, he could heighten the emotional resonance of his points, ensuring that his audience remained engaged and receptive to his rhetorical prowess. Thus, Gorgias's integration of exclamations into his oratory was a masterful technique that not only captured the attention of his listeners, but also enhanced the emotional weight and significance of his arguments. Imagine Gorgias standing before an Athenian audience, his voice resonating with authority as he speaks on behalf of a silent statue. He makes the statue come alive, narrating its history and experiences in such a way that listeners are captivated. He might say, "This marble figure, carved by the great sculptor Polysyndeton, has stood here for centuries, witnessing the rise and fall of empires." His words paint a vivid picture that makes the inanimate statue seem alive and full of stories. But Gorgias's use of Prosopopoeia wasn't limited to statues. He could give voice to rivers, trees, even concepts like justice or virtue. This technique allowed him to create intricate narratives that engaged his listeners deeply. The Nile, born in the distant highlands of Ethiopia, winds its way through Africa, bringing life and nourishment to all it meets, he might say. His words make the abstract concept of a river come alive with emotion and purpose. This ability to give voice to the voiceless not only captured the attention of his listeners, but also made abstract concepts more concrete and engaging. It was a masterful technique that Gorgias wielded with remarkable skill. By making inanimate objects or concepts speak, Gorgias created a sense of intimacy and connection between his audience and the subjects of his speeches. This technique allowed him to weave compelling narratives that stayed with his listeners long after he had finished speaking. It was a testament to his prowess as a rhetorician and storyteller. Gorgias, a master of rhetoric from ancient Greece, knew the power of language to persuade and captivate. One of his signature techniques was Pauronomasia, a form of wordplay that involves the repetition of similar-sounding words to create wit and memorability. Pauronomasia comes from the Greek words pauros, meaning few, and onoma, meaning names. It's a subtle but effective tool that Gorgias used to make his arguments more engaging. Consider this example. Is it not so that the same person is able to make a speech which will cause laughter among his listeners and yet be serious in purpose? This phrase, taken from Gorgias's encomium of Helen, uses Pauronomasia to create a rhythmic effect that makes the idea more accessible. The repetition of same person and the use of similar-sounding words like serious and purpose create a memorable cadence that listeners can easily recall. Gorgias applied this technique masterfully to make complex ideas more enjoyable and easier to understand. Imagine listening to a speech filled with dry, abstract arguments. Now compare that to hearing a speaker who uses wordplay and wit to bring their points alive. Gorgias's use of Pauronomasia turned his speeches into performances that stayed with listeners long after he had finished speaking. And as we learn from this master of persuasion, the art of rhetoric is not merely about conveying information, but also about captivating and engaging those who listen. In the late 420s BCE, a Sicilian philosopher named Gorgias stepped onto the Pan-Hellenic stage with a unique approach to persuasion. His signature style, marked by elegant language and dramatic flair, captured the attention of listeners across Greece. Ethos, derived from the Greek word for characters, refers to the credibility and authority an individual brings to their speech. Gorgias understood that before an audience would accept his rhetorical tricks, they needed to trust him. To build this trust, Gorgias shared insights from his extensive travels and studies, demonstrating his knowledge on a wide range of topics. His reputation as a wise and learned sophist preceded him, making it easier for listeners to believe in the arguments he presented. Moreover, Gorgias's rhetorical style was not merely about entertainment, but also about instilling confidence in his audience. By carefully structuring his arguments and using vivid examples, he made complex ideas accessible and compelling to those who listened. This ability to make the audience feel understood and confident in their grasp of the material further enhanced Gorgias's ethos. As we see from this master of persuasion, establishing trust and authority through ethos is an essential tool in the art of rhetoric. For it is not just the words that persuade, but also the character and credibility behind them. Among the many rhetorical devices he employed was Antimetabole, a symmetrical phrasing technique used to emphasize and reinforce his persuasive messages. In Gorgias's speeches, Antimetabole can be seen as a way to create balance and repetition in his arguments. For example, consider the phrase, "To know is to do is to know." This structure not only creates a pleasing symmetry but also drives home the interconnectedness of knowledge and action. The repetition and balance in Antimetabole serve to amplify Gorgias's persuasive message, making it more memorable and impactful. This technique can be observed in various forms throughout his speeches, each serving to underscore the essence of his argument. By using Antimetabole, Gorgias ingeniously reinforces his rhetorical tricks, allowing him to persuade anyone about anything. As Gorgias demonstrates his rhetorical prowess, he employs a strategic use of doubt known as Aporia. This technique, rooted in the Greek word for impasse or puzzlement, is designed to engage and captivate his audience. By introducing Aporia, Gorgias can manipulate uncertainty to his advantage, drawing listeners into his persuasive web. Aporia works by planting seeds of doubt in the minds of his listeners. Gorgias craftily presents arguments that seem plausible yet contain contradictions or ambiguities. He doesn't resolve these contradictions, leaving the audience to grapple with the paradoxes he raises. This uncertainty creates a cognitive tension that holds their attention and makes them more receptive to his subsequent rhetorical tricks. This tactic keeps the audience engaged, eager to resolve the cognitive dissonance created by his statements. As they wrestle with these paradoxes, Gorgias subtly guides them toward his desired conclusions. The uncertainty introduced through Aporia makes listeners more likely to accept his subsequent arguments as a means of resolving their confusion. Gorgias's use of Aporia isn't merely about creating confusion, it's also about making the audience active participants in his rhetorical journey. By presenting them with puzzles to solve, he involves them in the process of discovering truth. This interactive approach enhances the persuasiveness of his arguments and deepens the connection between Gorgias and his listeners. But the real mastery is in how he turns this engagement into a strategic advantage. By planting seeds of doubt, he can subtly shift the focus away from the logical flaws in his arguments and onto the audience's own cognitive processes. This shift in attention allows Gorgias to frame any challenges or criticisms as merely part of the exploration rather than outright refutations of his points. As the audience grapples with these aporetic moments, Gorgias deftly steers them toward his predetermined conclusions. This manipulation of uncertainty is both a source of fascination and a powerful tool in his rhetorical arsenal. By the time he concludes his speech, the listeners are not only convinced by his arguments, but also feel as if they have actively participated in the discovery of these truths. This subtle interplay between doubt and resolution is what sets Gorgias apart as a master rhetorician. His ability to introduce Aporia, guide his audience through the uncertainty, and ultimately resolve it in a way that favors his arguments is a testament to his skill. By harnessing the power of cognitive dissonance and active engagement, Gorgias can persuade anyone about anything. In this way, the art of rhetoric is not just about presenting arguments, it's also about creating an experience that draws listeners in and makes them active participants in the discovery of truth. This is the essence of Gorgias's strategic use of Aporia, a technique that has captivated audiences for centuries and continues to do so today. One of his most powerful tools was dialectic, a method of logical reasoning that can dismantle opposition and reinforce arguments. Imagine a debate where every objection can be broken down into smaller, more manageable questions. Gorgias could use this approach to slowly unravel any argument, making it seem ridiculous or irrelevant. His goal was not to find an absolute truth, but to make his opponent's position seem indefensible. In Gorgias's hands, dialectic became a sharp instrument for manipulation. He could turn any conversation into a game of intellectual ping-pong, always maintaining control. This skill wasn't just about winning arguments, it was about dominating the very process of thinking. Gorgias's intellectual prowess lies in his ability to make any complex issue seem simple and any opponent look foolish. It's a testament to his genius that even today, we study his methods with both admiration and caution. After all, understanding how to dismantle arguments is as important as knowing when and why to use them. Among his ingenious techniques were the skillful employments of paralogisms, arguments that might seem sound but are actually fallacious. A paralogism is a type of argument that appears to be logical but ultimately leads to an incorrect or misleading conclusion. Gorgias mastered the art of persuading audiences through these rhetorical tricks, using them with such finesse that they often went unnoticed by his listeners. One example is his use of antithesis, the juxtaposition of opposing ideas to create a contrasting effect. In his Enchantment of Helen, Gorgias famously defended Helen, blamed for the Trojan War, by arguing that her actions were not under her control, but rather driven by divine forces beyond her comprehension. This argument might appear to hold water at first glance, but it is fundamentally flawed in its attribution of Helen's actions to external forces rather than her own agency. Another technique Gorgias employed was Pauronomasia, the repetition of similar-sounding words or phrases for rhetorical effect. In his defense of Palamedes, Gorgias repeatedly uses the phrase, "by all means," to emphasize his point, creating a hypnotic rhythm that can captivate listeners. While this technique adds emotional appeal, it doesn't necessarily strengthen the logical foundation of his arguments. This technique gives his speeches a lyrical quality, making them more engaging but not necessarily more logically sound. His use of homoeoteliuton, ending successive phrases with the same word or a similar-sounding word, adds to this effect, creating an almost mesmerizing cadence. These devices are not inherently fallacious, but when used in excess, they can obscure the clarity of an argument's logic. Gorgias's mastery lay in his ability to blend these techniques seamlessly, making his arguments compelling even if they weren't logically airtight. This demonstrates another clever technique Gorgias used to sway audiences, the strategic use of paralogisms to persuade without necessarily proving his points. In the realm of ancient Greek rhetoric, one subtle technique that master orators like Gorgias employed to great effect is called Litotes. Litotes might sound unfamiliar, but it's a powerful and understated form of rhetorical understatement. But his mastery went beyond just dramatic flourishes. He had a keen eye for the subtle and understated. Litotes, in particular, is a technique where he'd say less to imply more. For example, instead of saying, "This speech is incredibly powerful," he might say, "It's not weak." This understated approach lets the audience fill in the blanks and can make his points even more impactful. In one of his speeches, Gorgias said, "He's not unknown to the gods," which subtly implied a close relationship with divine powers. This way of speaking not only engages the audience, but also leaves a lasting impression. Discovering another aspect of Gorgias's sophisticated rhetorical toolkit shows how he could persuade anyone about anything, with subtle yet powerful techniques like Litotes. His speeches were not just about grand gestures, they were about the artful use of language. One of his most cunning techniques was praeteritio, the deliberate omission of certain subjects or facts to persuade his audience. Praeteritio means passing over in silence, and Gorgias masterfully employed this technique to subtly guide his listeners' thoughts. In one of his famous speeches, Enchantment of Helen, Gorgias defended the mythical figure of Helen without ever mentioning her role in causing the Trojan War. Instead, he focused on her beauty and noble lineage, effectively persuading his audience to overlook her controversial past. By not addressing the elephant in the room, Helen's infamous actions, Gorgias skillfully redirected attention to her more favorable qualities. This strategic omission allowed him to reshape the narrative in a way that benefited his argument. In another instance, Gorgias used praeteritio to defend Palamedes in defense of Palamedes. He argued that Palamedes' supposed betrayal was insignificant compared to his other virtues and contributions. By glossing over the accusations of treason, Gorgias subtly influenced his audience to focus on Palamedes' positive aspects. These examples illustrate how Gorgias skillfully used deliberate omission as a tool in his rhetorical arsenal to sway opinions. Revealing yet another subtle technique Gorgias employed to influence audiences, we see how the power of what is left unsaid can be as impactful as what is spoken aloud. This technique shows that Gorgias's artistry in language extended beyond the words themselves to the spaces between them, the silences that spoke volumes. Epichyme, an ancient rhetorical technique, is a method of persuasion that Gorgias mastered and used to great effect. At its core, epichyme involves presenting a series of arguments that build on one another in a logical sequence. Gorgias's speeches are known for their intricate structure and use of this technique to create a cumulative effect on the audience's reasoning. This multi-step argument leads the listener to accept the premise that nothing can be known or communicated. Gorgias's use of this technique is not merely about presenting facts, but crafting a narrative that the audience can follow and be persuaded by. The logic of epichyme is what gives his rhetoric its potent edge. It's not just about making statements, but guiding the audience through a thought process. Imagine being in the audience as Gorgias lays out each logical step, building his case piece by piece until the conclusion is inescapable. By the time he reaches his final point, the audience feels as though they have discovered the truth on their own, making the persuasion all the more powerful. This demonstrates how Gorgias leveraged logic to make his rhetoric not only compelling but also deeply persuasive. In the late 420s and 410s BCE, Gorgias of Leontini captivated Athenian audiences with his mastery of rhetoric. His skillful use of repetition was a hallmark of his orations, enhancing both their memorability and persuasiveness. Defined by Aristotle as the repetition of the same thing or a similar thing, synthesis was an essential tool in Gorgias's rhetorical arsenal. By employing this technique, he could reinforce his arguments and ensure that his listeners retained the key points of his speeches. Gorgias's demonstrations at public gatherings often showcase this technique. For instance, he might say, "In rhetoric, as in life, there are those who possess the skill and those who do not," and then repeat a similar phrase, such as, "Some excel in oratory, while others falter." This redundancy not only served to emphasize his points, but also created a rhythm that made his words more memorable. The effect on the audience was profound. Gorgias's words lingered in their minds long after his orations ended. This technique allowed him to subtly guide the audience's thoughts and perceptions, making his arguments even more persuasive. But Gorgias did not rely solely on synthesis. He also employed other sophisticated techniques to enhance the effectiveness of his speeches. Another notable method was the use of antithesis, where he would contrast two opposing ideas to drive home his points. For example, he might say, "The wise man speaks little but with great impact, while the fool rambles on without meaning." This juxtaposition would leave a lasting impression on his listeners. This blend of techniques underscored Gorgias's mastery over the art of rhetoric and his ability to sway even the most discerning minds. Aporia is a rhetorical trick that leverages confusion to sway an audience's perspective. Gorgias demonstrated this technique in speeches and debates, often leaving listeners uncertain about the true nature of the topic. In one notable instance, Gorgias argued both sides of a case before an audience in ancient Athens. By presenting contradictory viewpoints, he created doubt and ambiguity among his listeners. The psychological impact on the listener is profound. When confronted with conflicting arguments, people often struggle to discern the truth, leading them to question their own beliefs and assumptions. This state of confusion is precisely what Gorgias aimed to achieve. By sowing doubt, he could more easily persuade his audience to adopt his perspective. The effectiveness of Aporia lies in its ability to disrupt the listener's mental equilibrium, making them more susceptible to persuasion. In essence, Gorgias used ambiguity and confusion as tools to manipulate thought processes, allowing him to steer the narrative in his favor. Paralogism involves using a subtle form of logical fallacy or trickery in argument to deceive the audience. Gorgias masterfully employed this technique in his speeches and writings. This logical fallacy forces the audience to accept one of the two choices without considering other possibilities or nuances. Gorgias then manipulates this binary framework to support his argument. By framing the debate in this way, Gorgias cleverly shifts the focus from Helen's actions to the broader question of justice itself. This technique allows him to manipulate public opinion and persuade his audience to accept his argument. In another instance, Gorgias uses circular reasoning in his defense of Palamedes. He argues that since Palamedes was condemned by the Greeks, it must be true that he was guilty. This circular reasoning creates a closed loop where the conclusion is based on the premise itself rather than on actual evidence or logic. Gorgias's use of paralogism demonstrates his deep understanding of human psychology and cognitive biases. By employing these rhetorical tricks, he could persuade anyone about anything. This ability to manipulate thought processes allowed him to steer the narrative in his favor and make his arguments more convincing. Discovering another sophisticated technique employed by Gorgias, we gain further insight into his mastery over rhetoric and the art of persuasion. As we delve deeper, we find that Gorgias's use of language was not merely about conveying information, but rather about crafting a compelling narrative that resonated with his audience. Understanding his techniques reveals the subtle yet powerful ways he influenced thought and shaped public opinion in ancient Greece. But how did Gorgias maintain his persuasiveness under criticism? One of his key strategies was the use of enthymemes, incomplete syllogisms where one or more premises are left unstated, relying on the audience to fill in the gaps. In his speeches, Gorgias would often present a partial argument, trusting that his listeners would infer the missing pieces and reach his desired conclusion. When faced with refutation, Gorgias would employ another tactic, highlighting specific examples from his speeches to bolster his arguments. By focusing on concrete instances, he could deflect criticism and redirect the conversation towards grounded evidence that resonated with his audience. In Gorgias's approach to refutation, he would often acknowledge counter-arguments, but then skillfully reframe them in a way that strengthened his original stance. For instance, if challenged about the moral implications of rhetoric, Gorgias might concede the validity of the concern, but then pivot to emphasizing the importance of skillful communication in a just society. By deftly navigating these rhetorical strategies, Gorgias managed to defend his position under adversity and maintain his persuasiveness in the face of criticism. This ability to adapt and respond effectively under pressure underscores how Gorgias's ingenious rhetorical tricks allowed him to persuade anyone about anything, shaping public opinion in ancient Greece. Epanorthosis is a form of repetition where the beginning and end of a passage are mirrored, creating a bookend effect. Gorgias used this technique to strengthen his arguments and make them more memorable. In his work, Enchantment of Helen, Gorgias uses epanorthosis to drive home his points about the power of persuasion and the nature of truth. The passage begins with a description of Helen's beauty and ends with the same phrase, emphasizing her influence over others. This repetition serves to reinforce the idea that Helen's beauty is so powerful it transcends even the most carefully crafted words and arguments. It underscores Gorgias's belief in the supreme power of persuasion. The effectiveness of epanalepsis lies in its ability to create a rhythm and symmetry that resonates with listeners. It makes the passage feel complete and satisfying, subconsciously signaling to the audience that they have reached a meaningful conclusion. Gorgias's use of epanalepsis is not just a literary device, it's a sophisticated rhetorical trick that enhances the persuasiveness of his arguments. By mirroring the beginning and end, he gives structure and coherence to his points, making them easier to follow and remember. Understanding epanalepsis gives us insight into how Gorgias could make his arguments compelling and memorable. It's another piece of the puzzle that reveals his mastery of rhetoric and his lasting impact on Greek philosophy. Perhaps next time you hear an argument that seems particularly persuasive, consider whether epanalepsis might be at play. The subtle art of repetition can be incredibly powerful in shaping our perceptions and beliefs.